Welcome to Histology. What if the rulers of our world aren't gods but jailers instead, not acting from evil intent or even conscious will, but from ignorance that is blind, automatic, and unstoppable? In the hidden texts of ancient Gnosticism lies a concept that flips reality upside down. The heavens above us, the systems surrounding us, even the thoughts inside our heads are not divine creations. They are manufactured, controlled, and maintained by lesser beings who think they are gods. These beings are called Archons, from the Greek word for rulers. But they don't create freedom. They enforce illusion, building layers of interference between humanity and truth, between spirit and source. They aren't evil in the typical sense. They don't torture, hunt, or destroy for pleasure. They don't need to. Their prison is built from comfort, routine, and forgetting. They keep us in place by turning our attention away from what we truly are to what we're told to be. Some Gnostics said there were 7 Archons, each connected to a planet, a passion, and a lie. Others spoke of 12 thrones or countless lesser rulers. But regardless of the number, the warning remained constant. We are not awake, we are not free, and those who rule us don't want us to remember. This is the story of the Archons, the gatekeepers of illusion, and the chains they created to bind the soul. To understand the Archons, you must start with their source of power, and their source wasn't light. According to Scythian Gnosticism, one of the most well-known and well-preserved Gnostic systems, the Archons were not part of the original divine order. They were born from a cosmic mistake. At the beginning of all things was the Pleroma, a perfect realm of divine light inhabited by eternal beings known as Aeons. Among them was Sophia, the embodiment of wisdom. But Sophia, in her yearning to create without her counterpart, made a fatal error. From this solitary act was born a malformed being, Yaldabaoth, also known as the Demiurge, a twisted imitation of true divinity. Sophia, ashamed of what she had unleashed, cast Yaldabaoth out of the Pleroma. He fell into the lower realms, unaware of his origins, and believed himself to be the only god in existence. From this delusion, he created the material world, a flawed, dense replica of the higher spiritual realms. But Yaldabaoth did not act alone for long. From himself, he generated rulers, Archons, to help govern his creation. These Archons were like extensions of his will, reflections of his ignorance, and tools to maintain control over the material illusion. In Scythian texts, such as the Apocryphon of John, the number of Archons varies depending on the layer of interpretation. Some texts refer to a group of 12 authorities, emanations, or lieutenants of Yaldabaoth, before narrowing down to 7 planetary Archons, each ruling a layer of heaven and governing one aspect of material experience. It's these 7 Archons that we will focus on. Different sects had different names, structures, and cosmologies, but the core warning remained the same. The Archons are not saviors. They are wardens. Their task is not to enlighten, but to distract, distort, and trap. They are the invisible hands keeping the soul asleep. And now we descend into their realm. In the system of Scythian Gnosticism, the Archons are the 7 planetary rulers forged by Yaldabaoth, the blind creator. They aren't divine in the traditional sense. They're flawed constructs, imitations of higher truths, tasked with managing the false heavens layered between Earth and the divine Pleroma. Each Archon presides over a specific realm traditionally aligned with one of the 7 classical planets: the Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So, what do the Archons actually do? They govern fate, they manage time, they distort desire, infect thought, and mirror power in crude material forms. They're not chaotic demons flailing blindly in the dark. They are systemized forces, cogs in a machinery of ignorance. And that machinery is massive. The Gnostics believed that when a soul dies, it does not rise freely. Instead, it must pass through the spheres of the Archons, guards at each layer of the false heavens. One by one, they challenge the soul, seeking to drag it back into the cycle of illusion and rebirth. But if the soul carries gnosis, true spiritual knowledge, it can name them, resist their deceptions, and slip past their grasp. Only then can it ascend beyond the veil, returning to the light from which it came. The Archon's job is to keep you focused on fear, lust, anger, vanity, and the endless treadmill of consumption. They don't want you to question, they want you to obey. And yet, they're not all the same. While they share a common origin and function, each Archon embodies a unique distortion of divine order. Gnostic texts often associate them with the 7 deadly passions. Not exactly the Christian 7 deadly sins, but ancient emotional patterns that weaken spiritual clarity. So before we meet them one by one, remember these aren't just mythic villains. They're patterns, systems, maybe even people. And if the Gnostics were right, they're still here, patiently waiting. At the heart of Gnostic cosmology sits a paradox. The God of this world is not the source of light, but the shadow that blocks it. His name is Yaldabaoth, the first Archon, the architect of illusion, and the false father who mistakes himself for God. In the Scythian tradition, Yaldabaoth is not just the creator, he is the origin of the Archons themselves, spawned from the fallen Sophia's misguided creation. Lacking gnosis, he became a god unto himself, declaring, "I am God, and there is no other." But his voice echoes from a hollow throne. Yaldabaoth's form is both divine and monstrous. In the Apocryphon of John, he is associated with the sun and described as having the face of a lion and the body of a serpent, 2 symbols of domination and deception. His eyes burn with a self-made glory, but they see nothing, for he is blind to the divine source beyond himself. His wings are vast, dark, and broken, not soaring, but suffocating. His light is imitation, a flickering counterfeit that blinds rather than illuminates. In some visions, he is surrounded by swirling chaos, suspended in a void that he mistakes for heaven. Yaldabaoth is not a devil with horns. He is the god behind the mask, commanding, confident, and utterly wrong about his place in the universe. Yaldabaoth's power lies in deception and separation. He carved out the material world, not to uplift, but to ensnare. He raised up his 7 Archons to rule each level of the cosmic prison, setting them as wardens over the soul's ascent. He does not tempt with chaos. He tempts with order, with a system that feels immovable, inescapable, and divinely sanctioned. He teaches that the world is all there is, and that he is the only God that ever was. He is pride made manifest, not malicious, but deeply misguided. He punishes curiosity. He fears awakening, and he demands worship to cover the hollow void within. Yaldabaoth's trap is ignorance, the deepest kind. Not just not knowing, but not knowing that you don't know. He offers laws, rituals, rewards, tools to keep the soul distracted from truth. His greatest achievement is convincing humanity that the prison is paradise and that obedience is salvation. In Gnostic texts, his power is absolute until you see through him. The moment the soul remembers its origin in the pleroma, Yaldabaoth begins to lose his grip. Gnostics believed he could be named, challenged, even bypassed in death by invoking sacred knowledge, gnosis, as a key. To overcome Yaldabaoth is not to fight him, but to see him clearly, to stop mistaking his voice for the divine, to remember that the true light comes from beyond. Yao is the second of the 7 Archons in Scythian Gnosticism, seated beneath Yaldabaoth and ruling the domain of Jupiter. His name appears in many forms across ancient texts, a divine syllable, a distorted echo of sacred power. But in Gnostic thought, Yao is not a god of wisdom. He is the tyrant of hierarchy cloaked in robes of judgment. Where Yaldabaoth builds the illusion, Yao defends its structure. He is the Archon of kingship and law, not true justice, but the illusion of it. He speaks of order, yet his order serves a blind system. He does not protect the soul. He binds it in ritual, legality, and cosmic bureaucracy. Yao is often envisioned as regal and imposing, a towering human figure wreathed in gold and white light with a face that resembles a ram or an elder judge crowned in lightning. His gaze is piercing, his voice like thunder, and around him swirl scrolls, seals, or burning tablets, symbols of contracts, covenants, and divine mandates twisted by counterfeit authority. Unlike Yaldabaoth's monstrous form, Yao appears noble, even radiant. But his glow is the sheen of polished chains. Yao rules through structure. He governs the laws of the material world, the false heavens, and even the flow of fate. Gnostics believed he was the architect of determinism, a being who writes the rules of incarnation, birth,